My name is Emily Richardson. I'm 32 years old, and until 3 days ago, I thought I knew what family meant. For 8 years, I've been organizing our New Year's Eve celebrations, spending thousands of my own dollars to create perfect memories for the people I love most. Then my phone lit up with a message that shattered everything I believed about loyalty and blood ties. What started as a simple family group text turned into a moment that exposed years of hidden betrayals, secret conversations, and financial manipulation I never saw coming. But when they thought they'd broken me, I made a decision that sent shockwaves through not just my family, but an entire community of women living the same nightmare. How far would you go to reclaim your worth when the people closest to you treat you like their personal ATM? What I did next will show you exactly how to turn your deepest pain into your greatest power. Let me take you back to where it began. I'm sitting in my Denver townhouse at 10:47 a.m. on December 29, 2024, staring at my phone screen in complete disbelief. The group text from my parents just landed like a bomb in my lap. "We think it would be better if Emily doesn't come to our party this year." The words blur together as my hands start shaking. This is 3 days before New Year's Eve. 3 days before the party I've been planning and paying for since October. My name is Emily Richardson. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 8 years, I've been the family's designated New Year's Eve hostess. Not by choice, mind you, but because when Grandma Richardson died in 2016, somehow everyone just expected me to step into her shoes. No discussion, no vote, just an assumption that Emily would handle everything like she always does. I work as marketing director at Mile High Marketing Solutions here in Denver. It took me 7 years to climb to this position, but you'd never know it from how my family treats my career. When I got my promotion back in June, my parents barely mumbled congratulations before launching into 20 minutes about my sister Ashley's new marketing campaign. Ashley's 27 and works as a marketing manager at a much smaller firm, but somehow her achievements always overshadow mine. The financial reality of these New Year's parties hits me like a slap every January when my credit card statements arrive. Over 8 years, I've spent $62,000 on family celebrations. $62,000. That includes the annual party costs of $5,000 to $7,000, plus all the loans I've given family members that somehow never get repaid, plus the gifts I buy for everyone else's kids, plus the emergencies I always seem to cover. My boyfriend Marcus sees it clearly. He's an IT project manager, 35 years old, and he's been watching this dysfunction for 2 years now with growing concern. Last month at Thanksgiving, he pulled me aside after watching my family criticize the meal I'd spent 3 days preparing and said, "Emily, they don't treat you like family. They treat you like hired help." "But hired help gets paid," I'd responded, and the look on his face told me everything. The Richardson family consists of my father, David, 63, who retired from managing an insurance office and now spends his time telling everyone else how to live their lives. My mother, Linda, 60, works part-time in real estate and part-time making excuses for why no one else can help with family obligations. Then there's my brother, Michael, 29, a software engineer, who somehow never has time to contribute to family events, but always has time to criticize them. My sister Ashley, 27, the golden child, who works in marketing and gets praised for ideas that aren't half as good as mine. And my youngest brother Ryan, 24, a financial analyst who's never organized anything in his life, but has plenty of opinions about how I should do things differently. Don't forget Uncle Robert, my dad's older brother, 66 years old, who owns a small construction business and owes me $18,000 from a loan I gave him 2 years ago. He keeps promising to pay me back next month, but next month never seems to come. The text message isn't just from my parents. I watch in real time as the thumbs up reactions start appearing underneath their message. Michael, Ashley, Ryan, even Uncle Robert. One by one, they're all agreeing that I shouldn't come to the party I've been planning for months. My coffee mug slips from my hand and shatters on the kitchen tile. The sound echoes through my townhouse in the Highlands neighborhood, and suddenly I can't breathe properly. This is the party where I've already ordered the champagne, booked the caterer, arranged the decorations, planned the resolution ceremony that's become our family tradition. I've spent weeks coordinating everything down to the midnight countdown playlist. And they don't want me there. My phone buzzes with individual texts now. From my mother, "Don't be dramatic, Emily. We just think everyone needs a break from the tension." From Ashley, "You've been so negative lately. Maybe this is for the best." From Michael, "It's not personal, we just want a peaceful celebration, not personal. 8 years of my life, thousands of dollars, countless hours of planning and preparation, and it's not personal." I type back the only response that feels right. "Perfect. You won't see me again either." The silence that follows is deafening. Then my phone starts ringing. David Richardson. I let it go to voicemail. It rings again. Linda Richardson. Voicemail. Ashley calling. Michael calling. Ryan calling. They're all calling now, but 20 minutes ago, they were all agreeing I shouldn't come. I turn off my phone and sit in the quiet of my kitchen, surrounded by broken ceramic and the realization that tonight everything changes. Looking back, I should have seen this coming. The signs were all there, starting with my promotion celebration in June. I'd worked 7 years at Mile High Marketing Solutions to reach marketing director, beating out 3 other candidates, including one internal competitor who'd been there longer than me. It was the biggest professional achievement of my life, and I was bursting to share the news with my family. I called my parents first, practically bouncing in my office chair. "Mom, Dad, I got the promotion. I'm the new marketing director." My mother's response was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's nice, honey. Speaking of marketing, did you hear about Ashley's new campaign? She got featured in that Denver Business Journal article." Within 30 seconds, the conversation had shifted entirely to my sister's much smaller accomplishment. Ashley had managed to get a brief mention in a local business publication for a campaign that reached maybe 50,000 people. My promotion meant overseeing campaigns that reached millions, managing a team of 12 people, and a salary increase that finally put me in 6 figures. But somehow, Ashley's tiny newspaper mention was more worthy of family excitement. The pattern became crystal clear at our family dinner that weekend. Ashley walked in beaming, waving a printed copy of the Denver Business Journal article like it was a Pulitzer Prize. Everyone gathered around, reading it aloud, asking questions, taking photos. When I tried to mention my promotion again, my father glanced up briefly and said, "That's great, Em. Very responsible of you. Responsible. Not impressive, not exciting, not worthy of celebration. Responsible. Like I'd simply done what was expected, rather than achieved something remarkable." Marcus witnessed the whole thing. He was new to family dinners, then still trying to understand the dynamics, but even he could see how off balance everything was. On the drive home, he said, "Emily, do they always treat your accomplishments like afterthoughts?" I made excuses, defended them, explained how Ashley rarely got recognition, so they were just trying to support her. But the seed of doubt was planted. At work, things were different. My colleagues Jessica Wong and Anthony Rivera, who'd become genuine friends over the years, threw me a proper celebration lunch. Jessica, our event coordinator, had even ordered a cake. Anthony, the creative director who'd become her boyfriend, made a speech about how well-deserved the promotion was. They asked detailed questions about my new responsibilities, my plans for the department, my vision for upcoming campaigns. For an hour, I felt valued and seen. The contrast was stark. At Mile High Marketing, my success mattered. My ideas were implemented. My leadership was respected. But at home, I remained the dependable daughter who quietly handled whatever needed handling while others got the spotlight. The workplace had its own challenges, though. Brad Morrison, a senior account manager who'd been passed over for my promotion, made his resentment clear from day one. He questioned my decisions in meetings, undermined my authority with clients, and had a habit of mansplaining marketing concepts to me despite my superior qualifications and new position. But at least at work I had allies. Jessica and Anthony had my back, and our agency's owner, Patricia Hendricks, had personally chosen me for the promotion. Uncle Robert's reaction to my promotion was particularly telling. When I mentioned it during a family barbecue, he immediately launched into a story about his construction business and how difficult it was to find good help these days. Then he asked if my new salary meant I could help him with some cash flow issues. Not congratulations, not excitement for my achievement, just an immediate calculation of how my success could benefit him. That $18,000 loan happened 3 weeks later. Uncle Robert needed to cover payroll for his crew while waiting for a client payment that was delayed. Just temporary, Em. I'll pay you back with interest as soon as this Morrison project check clears. 2 years later, I'm still waiting for that check to clear. The family's financial expectations of me had grown alongside my career advancement. Every promotion, every raise, every professional success translated into increased pressure to fund family activities, cover emergencies, and subsidize other people's poor financial planning. Success at work meant exploitation at home. Marcus started pointing out these patterns more frequently as our relationship deepened. He'd grown up in a family where achievements were celebrated, equally where financial responsibilities were shared fairly, where no one person carried the entire emotional and logistical burden of family maintenance. Watching my family dynamics confused and concerned him. One evening, after a particularly frustrating family phone call where my mother had criticized my career focus, Marcus asked me a question that stopped me cold. Emily, when was the last time your family celebrated something about you without immediately shifting the focus to someone else's needs? I couldn't answer him because I couldn't remember a single instance. That question haunted me for months, coloring every family interaction with new awareness. I started noticing how conversations went, who got attention, whose problems became family emergencies, whose successes got buried under other people's dramas. The scorecard was always lopsided, and I was always on the losing side. The realization was building slowly but surely. Professional success couldn't compensate for family invalidation. October 2024 brought my annual financial review, something I'd been putting off for weeks. Between work deadlines and family obligations, personal bookkeeping always took a back seat. But with my promotion came new financial responsibilities and the need to plan for year-end bonuses and tax implications. I spread my credit card statements across my dining room table, along with bank records and loan documents, determined to get organized. What I discovered made my stomach drop to the floor. The first red flag was my Chase Visa statement. $4,200 charged to Richardson Home Improvement in August. I'd never heard of this company, but the address matched my parents' house. I called the number listed and discovered it was the contractor who'd renovated their kitchen. My kitchen renovation. Paid for with my credit card. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through our family group chat, searching for any mention of this expense. Nothing. No request for help, no discussion of financial difficulties, no mention that they couldn't afford their own home improvements. They'd simply used my credit card number, which they had access to for family emergencies. The discovery opened a floodgate of investigation. My American Express showed $1,800 in charges from tropical getaways travel. Ashley's family vacation to Cancun in September. She'd posted dozens of photos on social media, bragging about the all-inclusive resort, the spa treatments, the excursions. Apparently, I'd funded her Instagram paradise without knowing it. My emergency savings account, which I'd been building for years, showed multiple unauthorized withdrawals. $3,000 to cover Ryan's car down payment when his credit was declined. $5,000 for Michael's girlfriend's medical bills when she needed dental surgery. $1,500 for Uncle Robert's business insurance when his account was overdrawn. All presented as temporary loans that would be repaid immediately. None had been repaid, not $1. I called my parents first, my hands shaking as I dialed. Dad answered on the third ring. "Hey Em, what's up, Dad? I'm looking at my credit card statements. There's a $4,000 charge for your kitchen renovation that I never authorized. His tone shifted immediately. Oh, that. Well, you know how tight things have been since my retirement. We figured you could help out temporarily. We'll pay you back. Dad, you used my credit card without asking. That's not borrowing, that's stealing. Don't be dramatic, Emily. Family helps family. You're making good money now, and we raised you. I think we've earned a little support. The word earned hit me like a physical blow. They'd earned the right to steal from me because they'd raised me. Because doing your job as a parent apparently entitled you to your adult child's credit cards. My conversation with my mother went even worse. When I confronted her about the pattern of unauthorized charges and unpaid loans, she sighed heavily. Emily, you're being very selfish about this. We're not strangers asking for handouts. We're your family. Selfish. I was selfish for wanting to know when my money was being spent. Selfish for expecting repayment of loans. Selfish for questioning unauthorized use of my credit. Ashley's response was the most infuriating. When I called about the vacation charges, she laughed. Don't be such a bean counter. You can afford it, and we really needed that trip. The kids had been so stressed with school starting. Consider it an early Christmas gift. A gift. $1,800 taken without permission was somehow a gift I'd voluntarily given. Marcus found me crying at my kitchen table that evening, surrounded by financial documents and a calculator showing devastating totals. Emily, what's wrong? What happened? I showed him everything. The unauthorized charges, the unpaid loans, the systematic depletion of my savings. The total came to $28,000 beyond the party costs I'd already calculated. My family had stolen or borrowed $28,000 from me over 8 years, and not one person considered it problematic. Marcus's face grew darker with each revelation. Emily, this is financial abuse. You know that, right? This isn't normal family behavior. This is exploitation. I wanted to defend them, to explain the complexities of family relationships, but the evidence was undeniable. They'd systematically used my credit, depleted my savings, and taken my money without permission or repayment. When confronted, they'd responded with manipulation, guilt trips, and accusations that I was selfish for objecting. The next morning, I called Jessica at work. I need to talk to someone about family stuff. Can we grab lunch? Jessica and Anthony met me at our usual spot, a quiet cafe near the office. When I laid out the financial abuse, Jessica's mouth fell open. Emily, this is beyond family dysfunction. This is criminal behavior. They're stealing from you systematically. Anthony nodded grimly. My family has asked for help before, but they always ask first and they always pay back. What you're describing is theft disguised as family obligation. Their validation meant everything. For months, I'd been gaslighting myself, wondering if I was overreacting, if this was normal family behavior, if I was being unreasonably rigid about money. But Jessica and Anthony confirmed what Marcus had been saying. This was abuse, not family support. I started photographing every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. If this was systematic theft, I needed to document it properly. That afternoon, I made an appointment with Dr. Claire Bennett, a family therapist Jessica had recommended. I needed professional perspective on what was happening to me, and more importantly, I needed strategies for protecting myself. The pattern was becoming undeniably clear. My family saw me as a resource to be exploited, not a person to be respected. Thanksgiving 2024 became my testing ground, though I didn't realize it at the time. I'd volunteered to host again, naturally, spending 3 days preparing a feast for 12 people. My townhouse smelled like sage and butter, the dining room table stretched to accommodate everyone, and I'd even bought special placemats featuring each family member's photo from childhood. The effort was enormous. Turkey ham, 3 types of stuffing, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole, green bean almondine cranberry sauce from scratch dinner rolls, and 3 different pies. I'd taken 2 vacation days to prep properly, spending over $600 on groceries and decorations. Ashley arrived an hour late, with her husband Jake and their 3 kids carrying a store-bought pumpkin pie still in its plastic container. "Sorry, we're running behind," she announced, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic was crazy and the kids couldn't decide what to wear. Michael showed up with his new girlfriend Stephanie, whom he'd been dating for exactly 3 weeks. "Oh, by the way, Stephanie's vegetarian," he mentioned casually as they walked in. "Hope that's not a problem." It wasn't a problem for Michael, who'd given me 0 advance notice, but I'd already prepared the green beans with bacon, the stuffing had turkey stock, and even the cranberry sauce had been cooked in the same pan as the turkey drippings. I spent 20 minutes in the kitchen, frantically preparing separate vegetarian portions, while everyone else sat in the living room drinking wine. Uncle Robert arrived carrying nothing but complaints. "Traffic's getting worse every year in this city. Your driveway's too steep, Em. Nearly slipped on those wet leaves. When's dinner? I've got to watch the game later." The criticism started before we'd even said grace. "The turkey's a little dry this year," Ashley commented, cutting into the perfectly moist bird I'd brined for 24 hours. "These potatoes could use more butter," Michael added, though he was already reaching for seconds. Uncle Robert just grunted and focused on his plate, but not before mentioning that Grandma Richardson's stuffing had more flavor. More flavor. I'd followed Grandma's recipe exactly, even calling my mother twice during preparation to confirm the measurements. But somehow my version was inferior to the mythical perfection of memory. My mother sighed dramatically as she surveyed the spread. "Well, we can't all be perfect cooks like Grandma was. Thanks for trying, honey." Trying. As if the 3 days of preparation, the hundreds of dollars spent the vacation time used, the careful attention to everyone's dietary preferences, was just me, trying and falling short of an impossible standard. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. He'd watched me work myself into exhaustion preparing this meal, and he could see the hurt in my eyes as each family member found something to criticize. After dinner, while I cleared dishes and loaded the dishwasher, most of the family migrated to the living room to watch football. Ashley's kids had left food scattered across the floor. Michael and Stephanie had disappeared outside to vape. Uncle Robert was asleep in my recliner, snoring loudly. I was scrubbing the roasting pan when I heard them talking in the kitchen. Ashley, Ryan, and Michael had gathered around the island, picking at leftover pie and apparently feeling free to critique my hosting skills. "Emily always has to make everything so complicated," Ashley was saying. "It's like she's trying to make us look bad with all this fancy stuff." "She does love to be the martyr," Michael agreed. "Remember when we were kids, she'd clean the whole house just so Mom would notice and tell her she was such a good helper." Ryan laughed. "Still doing it. Look at this spread. Who needs 3 kinds of stuffing? It's like she's performing instead of just having a normal family dinner." The words hit me like physical blows. I'd spent days trying to create a beautiful experience for them, and they saw it as performance art designed to make them look inadequate. They thought I was showing off rather than showing love. I stood at the sink, hands covered in sudsy water, listening to them dissect my motivations and find them wanting. Not once did anyone mention that I'd paid for everything, prepared everything, and would clean up everything. Not once did anyone acknowledge that without my effort, there would be no family Thanksgiving at all. Marcus appeared in the doorway, having apparently overheard the conversation as well. His face was tight with anger, but he kept his voice level. "Can I help with anything in here?" The kitchen conversation stopped abruptly. My siblings scattered back to the living room like guilty teenagers caught gossiping. Marcus started drying dishes without being asked. "They don't deserve you," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" For the first time, I was starting to wonder if he might be right. Later that evening, after everyone had left and my house looked like a tornado had hit it, I discovered something that changed everything. Ryan had left his phone on my kitchen counter, and it kept buzzing with notifications. I was about to call him when I glanced at the screen and saw the group chat name, Richardson Family Updates. My heart stopped. I wasn't in a chat called Richardson Family Updates. I was a Richardson. Why wasn't I included in family updates? The phone buzzed again and I saw the preview of a message from Ashley. Emily's such a control freak about these dinners. Maybe we should just do potluck next year. I set the phone down like it was radioactive. My family had a secret group chat where they discussed me behind my back. They were making family decisions without including me, while expecting me to execute those decisions flawlessly. The exclusion was intentional, systematic, and devastating. December brought my busiest season at Mile High Marketing Solutions. Our agency handled major corporate holiday events, year-end campaigns, and New Year's promotional pushes for clients across Colorado. I was working 60-hour weeks minimum, managing 3 major accounts while trying to establish my authority as the new marketing director. The pressure was intense, but I loved the challenge and the validation that came with professional success. Meanwhile, my family's expectations for New Year's Eve remained unchanged. Despite my demanding work schedule, despite the financial abuse I'd uncovered, despite their secret group chat where they criticized my every move, they still expected me to organize and fund their perfect celebration. I decided to try a different approach. During our December family dinner, I announced that I'd need help with this year's party. With my new position, I explained I simply couldn't handle everything alone like I had in previous years. My father barely looked up from his plate. "You'll figure it out, Em. You always do." "Actually, Dad, I won't figure it out this time. I need other people to step up and take responsibility for parts of the event." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Nobody expects perfection, honey. Just keep it simple this year. Simple." After 8 years of elaborate celebrations that cost me thousands of dollars and weeks of preparation, now they wanted simple. But simple for whom? Simple for them, because they wouldn't have to contribute anything. The burden of making it simple would still fall entirely on me. I tried assigning specific tasks. "Michael, could you handle the bar setup and music? Ashley, would you coordinate decorations? Ryan, can you manage the resolution ceremony this year?" The excuses came immediately. Michael had a major software deployment scheduled for the week before New Year's Eve. Ashley had the kids' winter break activities to manage. Ryan had just bought his first house and was too busy with move-in logistics. Nobody mentioned that I also had major work deadlines, that I also had personal responsibilities, that I also deserved consideration when family obligations were being distributed. But it was during this time that I discovered something far worse than their refusal to help. I was reviewing my credit report for a mortgage pre-approval when I found an inquiry I didn't recognize. Rocky Mountain Business Credit had pulled my credit in September for a loan application I'd never submitted. I called the number listed and discovered the truth. Uncle Robert had used me as a credit reference for an $18,000 business loan for his construction company, Richardson Contracting. He'd listed me as a business partner and financial guarantor, without my knowledge or consent. The loan was 3 months overdue. My credit score had dropped 40 points because of Uncle Robert's defaulted loan that I knew nothing about. He'd used my income information, my employment history, and my credit profile to secure funding for his failing business, then defaulted on the payments and damaged my financial standing. I confronted him at a family barbecue the next weekend. "Uncle Robert, I found a credit inquiry from Rocky Mountain Business Credit. Did you use my information for a loan application?" His face flushed red. "Well, yeah, I put you down as a reference. You've got good credit and I needed a reliable guarantor." "Robert, you can't use someone as a guarantor without their permission. That's fraud." "Don't be so dramatic, Emily. It's just paperwork. The business is doing fine. I'll get caught up on payments soon. Your loan is 3 months overdue and it's affecting my credit score. Look, things have been tight lately. This Morrison project got delayed and the client's been slow to pay. I'll sort it out next month." Next month. The same promise he'd been making about repaying my personal loan for 2 years. At work, my stress was compounded by Brad Morrison's continued attempts to undermine my authority. He questioned my decisions in client meetings, tried to go around me to upper management, and made snide comments about promoting people too quickly. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was fighting for respect both at home and at work, but at least at work I had allies and company policies to protect me. Jessica noticed my increasing exhaustion. "Emily, you look like you haven't slept in weeks." "What's going on?" I told her about the credit fraud, the family's refusal to help with New Year's planning, and the mounting pressure from all directions. Jessica's reaction was immediate and protective. "Emily, what your uncle did is a federal crime. Using someone's identity for credit applications without consent is identity theft. You need to report this." She was right, but the thought of taking legal action against family felt overwhelming. That's when Jessica suggested I talk to a professional about everything that was happening. Dr. Claire Bennett's office was in a quiet building near downtown Denver, decorated with warm colors and comfortable furniture designed to put people at ease. During our first session, I laid out the entire situation: the financial abuse, the secret group chat, the credit fraud, the systematic exclusion from family decisions while being expected to execute them perfectly. Dr. Bennett listened without judgment, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she looked at me with compassion and clarity. "Emily, what you're describing is called scapegoating. In dysfunctional family systems, one person is assigned the role of caretaker and problem solver while simultaneously being blamed for any problems that arise. You've been carrying the emotional, financial, and logistical burden of your family's dysfunction while receiving criticism instead of appreciation." The validation was both relief and heartbreak. Relief that my experiences were real and recognizable. Heartbreak that my family relationships were so fundamentally damaged. I started researching narcissistic family systems, financial abuse patterns, and legal options for credit fraud. The more I learned, the clearer it became that I had choices I'd never considered before. I could report the credit fraud. I could refuse to organize the New Year's party. I could set boundaries that protected my finances and emotional well-being. For the first time in my adult life, I realized I had power in these relationships. The confrontation I'd been avoiding finally came on December 26th. I'd requested a family video call to discuss New Year's Eve logistics, and everyone reluctantly agreed to join. As their faces appeared on my laptop screen, I could see the annoyance in their expressions. Nobody wanted to spend time talking about party planning when they assumed I'd handle everything as usual. I'd prepared for this conversation like a business presentation. I had notes, specific task assignments, and a clear agenda. My heart was pounding, but Dr. Bennett's words echoed in my mind about standing up for myself and setting boundaries. "Okay, everyone." I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to discuss this year's New Year's Eve party. With my increased work responsibilities, I can't handle everything alone anymore. I need each of you to take ownership of specific aspects." My father's face immediately hardened. "Emily, what's all this about? You've never needed help before." "Actually, Dad, I've always needed help. I've just never asked for it before. This year I'm asking." I pulled up my prepared list and started reading assignments. "Mom and Dad, I'd like you to handle the main food preparation and coordinate with the caterer. Michael, can you manage the bar setup and music playlist? Ashley, would you take care of decorations and setup? Ryan? The resolution ceremony has become a tradition, so I'd like you to organize that portion." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my mother spoke up with obvious irritation. "Emily, this seems unnecessarily complicated. We've been doing these parties just fine for years. Why are you trying to change everything now?" "Because I'm exhausted, Mom. I've been organizing and funding these parties for 8 years. I need the family to actually participate instead of just showing up and criticizing." Ashley's face appeared larger on screen as she leaned forward. "Emily, nobody asked you to make everything so elaborate. You choose to do all this fancy stuff and then you complain about it. That's on you. The accusation stung because it was so fundamentally unfair. You've all come to expect elaborate celebrations. When I've suggested simpler alternatives in the past, you've complained that it wasn't festive enough. Michael jumped in with his typical dismissive tone. Look, Em, you're good at this event planning stuff. It's basically your job. Why would we mess with what works? What works for whom, Michael? It works for all of you because you get a perfect party without any effort or expense. It doesn't work for me because I'm drowning in responsibility and debt. That's when I decided to reveal what I'd discovered. I know about the secret group chat, Richardson family updates, the one that includes everyone except me. I know you've been discussing family decisions behind my back while expecting me to execute them perfectly. The awkward silence told me everything. No denials, no explanations, just guilty faces avoiding eye contact with their cameras. I also know about the financial abuse. The unauthorized credit card charges the unpaid loans Uncle Robert using my credit for his business loan without my permission. Uncle Robert's face flushed red. Now hold on, Emily. That's not how it happened. You're misremembering things. I'm not misremembering anything, Uncle Robert. I have bank statements, credit reports, and loan documents. You listed me as a guarantor for an $18,000 loan that's 3 months overdue and damaging my credit score. Look, business has been tough lately. The Morrison project got delayed and cash flow has been tight. I'll get caught up soon. You've been saying that for 2 years about the money you already owe me. Now you've damaged my credit without my permission. That's fraud, Uncle Robert. The word fraud hung in the air like a bomb. My family wasn't used to me using legal terminology or threatening real consequences. My father's voice rose with anger. Emily, you're being completely unreasonable. Family helps family. We're not strangers here. Family helps family, Dad, but help goes both ways. When has this family ever helped me with anything? When have any of you supported my career, celebrated my achievements, or contributed to my well-being? You're being dramatic, Ashley said. We support you all the time. How? Give me one specific example of how this family has supported me in the past year. Another silence. They couldn't answer because there were no examples. I took a deep breath and delivered my ultimatum. Here's the situation. I will not organize this year's New Year's Eve party unless everyone commits to specific responsibilities and financial contributions. I will not continue funding family celebrations while you criticize my efforts, and I will not tolerate any more unauthorized use of my credit or demands for unpaid loans. My mother's voice turned cold. Emily, if you're going to bring this negative attitude to our celebration, maybe you should consider not coming at all. The words hit me like a physical blow. After 8 years of sacrificing my time, money, and energy to create perfect celebrations for them, I was now the problem to be eliminated rather than the person to be supported. Ryan nodded in agreement. Yeah, this is supposed to be fun, not some big confrontation about who does what. Fun for whom I shot back. It's fun for all of you because you show up, eat, drink, and leave. It's work for me. Expensive, exhausting, unappreciated work. Marcus, who'd been listening from across the room, stepped into view of the camera. Maybe I can help coordinate some of this. My father's voice turned icy. This is a family matter, Marcus. No offense. The dismissal of Marcus, who'd been nothing but supportive, was the final insult. They'd exclude my partner from family decisions while expecting me to manage everything alone. The video call ended with nothing resolved and tensions higher than ever. As I closed my laptop, I realized my family had just shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. They wanted my service without my presence, my labor without my voice, my money without my respect. 3 days passed in tense silence after that disastrous video call. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid thinking about the New Year's Eve situation. But on the morning of December 29th, at exactly 10:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with a group text that shattered my world. The message was from my father, sent to the family group chat that actually included me this time. We think it would be better if Emily doesn't come to our party this year. The constant complaints and demands are creating tension, and we all want a peaceful celebration." I stared at the screen in complete shock. My coffee mug slipped from my hands and crashed to the kitchen floor, but I barely noticed the hot liquid splashing across my feet. This was 3 days before New Year's Eve. 3 days before the party I'd been mentally preparing for months, the party that had defined my role in the family for 8 years. Then the reactions started appearing in real time like daggers to my heart. Michael's thumbs up, Ashley's thumbs up, Ryan's thumbs up, Uncle Robert's thumbs up. One by one, every person I'd sacrificed for every person I'd supported financially and emotionally was agreeing that I shouldn't come to the celebration I'd been funding and organizing for nearly a decade. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely type, but I managed to send back the only response that felt honest. "Perfect. You won't see me again either." The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 minutes. Then my phone exploded with calls and texts. Suddenly, the same people who'd just agreed I shouldn't attend were panicking about the practical implications of their decision. David Richardson calling. I let it go to voicemail. Linda Richardson calling. Voicemail. A text from my mother appeared. "Don't be childish, Emily. We just think everyone needs a break from the drama." Drama. I was creating drama by asking for basic respect and shared responsibility. Ashley texted. "Where are the caterer's contact details? We need the supplier list for the party." They'd uninvited me but still expected me to provide the vendor information to make their celebration possible. Michael called 3 times in a row. When I finally answered, his voice was frantic. Where did you order the champagne, and what about the decorations?" "Everything's already been planned, right, Michael? You just agreed that I shouldn't come to the party." "Why would I have planned anything?" "Well, yeah, but we figured you'd already done most of the work. We just meant you shouldn't attend the actual party." The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted to exclude me from the celebration while still benefiting from my preparation and funding. I hung up and turned off my phone. The physical symptoms hit me like a freight train. My chest felt tight like I couldn't get enough air. My vision started tunneling and a strange ringing filled my ears. I felt simultaneously freezing cold and burning hot. My legs gave out and I found myself sitting on my kitchen floor surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee, gasping for breath. Marcus found me there 20 minutes later. He'd been working from home and came downstairs when he heard the crash. "Emily, what happened? Are you hurt?" I couldn't speak. I just handed him my phone and watched his face change as he read the family group chat. His expression went from confusion to disbelief to pure rage. "Those selfish, ungrateful people," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "After everything you've done for them, this is how they treat you." That's when the tears finally came. 8 years of trying to earn their love through service. 8 years of sacrificing my time, money, and emotional well-being to create perfect celebrations for people who saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be valued. All of it crashing down in a single text message and 4 thumbs-up reactions. Marcus helped me to the couch and held me while I sobbed. When I could finally speak, the words poured out between gasps. "They don't want me there, Marcus. They never wanted me there. They just wanted what I could provide." I called Dr. Bennett's emergency line and managed to get an appointment that afternoon. Sitting in her comfortable office, I showed her the text exchange and described the physical symptoms I'd experienced. "Emily," she said gently, "what you experienced sounds like a panic attack. Your nervous system finally reached its breaking point after years of chronic stress and emotional abuse." She helped me understand that my family's behavior wasn't just hurtful, it was deliberately cruel. They'd waited until 3 days before the event to uninvite me, ensuring maximum emotional damage while still hoping to benefit from my preparations. Dr. Bennett asked what I wanted to do next. For the first time in years, I realized I had choices. I could beg them to reconsider and spend New Year's Eve being grateful for their tolerance of my presence. I could organize their party from behind the scenes and pretend their rejection didn't devastate me. Or I could choose myself for the first time in my adult life. I called my office and used my accumulated personal days to take the rest of the week off. Patricia Hendricks, our agency owner, didn't ask questions, but told me to take care of myself and that my job would be waiting when I returned. Then I called a luxury cabin rental service in Breckenridge and booked a mountain retreat for December 30th through January 2nd. A place with a fireplace, a hot tub, and complete isolation from the family that had just shown me exactly how little I meant to them. Marcus immediately rearranged his schedule to come with me. I also called Sarah Kim, the attorney Dr. Bennett had recommended, and scheduled a consultation about credit fraud recovery and legal options for enforcing no-contact boundaries. As I packed for our mountain getaway, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The freedom that comes from finally understanding that you don't have to keep trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it. My family had made their choice. Now it was time to make mine. The first thing I did was load my car with every single item I'd purchased for the New Year's Eve party. The champagne cases, the decorative centerpieces, the specialty appetizers I'd ordered from 3 different gourmet shops. The party favors the resolution. Ceremony supplies, even the expensive linens I'd bought specifically for this celebration. Everything went into my Honda CR-V. My destination was the Denver Rescue Mission on Lawrence Street. I'd volunteered there during college and knew they hosted a New Year's celebration for families experiencing homelessness. When I called ahead, the volunteer coordinator, Maria Santos, was thrilled. "Are you serious?" she asked when I described what I was donating. "We usually serve basic refreshments, but this sounds like you're providing a real celebration." "That's exactly what I want to provide," I told her. "A real celebration for people who will actually appreciate it." Loading the donations felt like lifting weights off my chest. Each box I carried represented money I'd spent trying to buy love from people who were incapable of giving it. Now these supplies would create joy for families who understood the value of kindness. After delivering everything to the mission, I sat in my car and did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I opened my laptop and began typing a Facebook post. I'd never been one to air family drama on social media, but this wasn't drama. This was truth-telling. I wrote about 8 years of organizing and funding family celebrations while receiving criticism instead of gratitude. I included screenshots of the family text uninviting me and the thumbs-up reactions from my siblings and uncle. I wrote about the financial abuse, the secret group chat, the credit fraud. Then I tagged every family member in the post. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, I had dozens of comments from friends, colleagues, and acquaintances expressing shock and support. People shared their own stories of family dysfunction, financial abuse, and setting boundaries with toxic relatives. Jessica commented, "Emily, I had no idea it was this bad. You're incredibly brave for speaking out." Anthony wrote, "This behavior is appalling. You deserve so much better." My neighbor Karen, whom I barely knew beyond polite hellos, left a long comment about cutting off her own financially abusive brother and how much happier she'd become. But the most meaningful responses came from complete strangers. Women who'd found my post through mutual friends began sharing their own experiences with family scapegoating, financial exploitation, and the guilt that comes with setting boundaries. One woman named Jennifer wrote, "Thank you for posting this. I've been funding my family's celebrations for 15 years and feeling guilty for resenting it. Your story gave me permission to stop." While my post was gaining traction, my family was experiencing their own crisis. My phone, which I'd turned back on to monitor the social media response, started buzzing with frantic calls and texts. Ashley texted Emily, "Delete that Facebook post right now. This is embarrassing for all of us." My mother called repeatedly, leaving increasingly hysterical voicemails. Emily, how could you air our private family business like this? People are calling me asking questions I can't answer. Uncle Robert left a furious voicemail. That post is damaging my business reputation. I've got clients asking me about it. You need to take it down immediately. But I noticed something telling about their responses. Not one family member apologized for their behavior. Not one acknowledged the hurt they'd caused. Their only concern was damage control for their own reputations. Meanwhile, they were discovering the practical nightmare of hosting a New Year's Eve party without my preparation. Michael called in a panic because none of the vendors I'd used in previous years would work with them on 3 days' notice. Ashley couldn't find suppliers for the specific decorations and party favors that had become family traditions. Ryan had no idea how to organize the resolution ceremony that everyone expected. My parents were frantically calling catering companies only to discover that quality caterers book holiday events months in advance. The few available options were either outrageously expensive or completely inadequate for their expectations. From my mountain cabin in Breckenridge, I watched their chaos unfold through social media and voicemails while feeling a strange sense of peace. Marcus had arranged for us to spend New Year's Eve in complete luxury. Our cabin had a massive stone fireplace floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered peaks and a private hot tub on the deck. For the first time in 8 years, I woke up on New Year's Eve without a massive to-do list, without financial stress, without the pressure to create perfection for ungrateful people. We had champagne and takeout from a local restaurant. We watched the ball drop on TV instead of orchestrating our own countdown. We made our own resolutions privately instead of performing them for family validation. It was the most peaceful New Year's Eve of my adult life. Back in Denver, according to the reports I received from mutual friends, my family's party was a disaster. They'd managed to cobble together some basic refreshments, but nothing approached the elaborate celebrations I'd created. Uncle Robert's wife told our neighbor that the whole evening felt awkward and tense, with everyone asking where Emily was and why she wasn't there. My social media post continued to gain traction throughout the weekend. Local friends began sharing it, and eventually, it caught the attention of Sandra Mitchell, a reporter for Denver Lifestyle magazine, who'd been writing about family dynamics during the holidays. She reached out through private message, asking if I'd be willing to discuss my experience for an article about setting boundaries with toxic family members. For the first time in my life, my story mattered to someone outside my immediate circle. January 2025 brought a harsh reality that my family hadn't anticipated. Without my vendor relationships and advanced planning, they'd cobbled together a makeshift New Year's Eve celebration that became neighborhood gossip within days. Karen, my next-door neighbor, stopped me while I was getting my mail to share what she'd witnessed. "Emily, I have to tell you, your family's party was a complete disaster. They had pizza delivered at midnight, ran out of champagne by 10 o'clock, and your uncle was arguing with some delivery driver about payment issues right there in the driveway." The image would have been comical if it wasn't so predictable. 8 years of elaborate celebrations had set expectations they couldn't meet without my coordination and financial backing. But the real crisis began when Uncle Robert's business came under serious scrutiny. The credit fraud complaint I'd filed with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had triggered a broader examination of Richardson Contracting's financial practices. Detective Lisa Martinez called me in mid-January to discuss their findings. "Miss Richardson," she said over the phone, "your uncle's case has revealed a pattern of credit manipulation. You're not the only victim. We've identified 3 other individuals whose credit he used inappropriately for business loans. 3 other victims." Uncle Robert had been systematically defrauding people to keep his failing construction business afloat. My case wasn't an isolated family dispute, it was part of a criminal enterprise. The investigation moved quickly. Uncle Robert's business partner, Tom Morrison, immediately distanced himself when investigators approached him. Several ongoing construction projects were suspended when clients learned about the fraud investigation. By February, Richardson contracting was hemorrhaging money and facing potential criminal charges. Uncle Robert called me repeatedly, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. "Emily, you're destroying my livelihood over a misunderstanding. Can't we work this out as family? I've got crews depending on me for their paychecks. You're hurting innocent people." But Detective Martinez had shown me the evidence. Uncle Robert had stolen identities, manipulated credit applications, and defaulted on multiple loans using other people's financial information. This wasn't a family misunderstanding, it was systematic fraud. The ripple effects extended far beyond Uncle Robert's business. My parents faced social isolation as our extended family and neighbors learned about the financial abuse through my viral Facebook post. My mother's real estate colleagues began questioning her judgment and character. My father's retirement community friends started avoiding him at their weekly poker games. Ashley discovered that her professional reputation had taken a hit when colleagues Googled her name and found my post about family dysfunction. Her marketing firm's HR department had even asked her about it during her annual review, concerned about potential character issues that might affect client relationships. Michael's situation was perhaps the most revealing. His girlfriend Stephanie, the one I'd accommodated last minute at Thanksgiving, broke up with him after reading about our family's behavior online. She told mutual friends that she couldn't respect someone who participated in financial abuse and then got angry when called out for it. Meanwhile, my social media post continued to inspire others. I received dozens of private messages from people sharing their own stories of family financial abuse, scapegoating, and boundary-setting journeys. 3 women had filed their own credit fraud complaints after reading my story and realizing their families had similarly exploited them. The Denver Rescue Mission contacted me with an unexpected request. Maria Santos called to tell me that my New Year's donation had been so successful, they wanted to partner with me on an annual event. "Emily," she said, "the families were so grateful for the celebration you provided. Several people asked if we could make this a yearly tradition. Would you consider helping us organize an annual New Year's celebration for families in transition?" The request felt like a gift from the universe. Instead of funding celebrations for ungrateful family members, I could create meaningful events for people who genuinely appreciated kindness and community. Jessica and Anthony had become even stronger allies, checking on me regularly and celebrating each step of my healing journey. When I told them about the mission's request, Jessica immediately volunteered to help with event coordination. Anthony suggested we could involve our agency as a sponsor, providing professional marketing and event planning services. This could become a signature community initiative for Mile High Marketing Solutions. At work, my professional life was flourishing without the constant drain of family drama. Patricia Hendricks had noticed my increased focus and energy, leading to conversations about potential partnership opportunities within the agency. But the legal process was just beginning. Sarah Kim, the attorney I'd consulted, filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Uncle Robert for credit fraud, identity theft, and financial damages. She was also helping me establish formal no-contact orders to prevent family harassment. The financial recovery process would take months, but Sarah was optimistic about recovering at least partial damages. More importantly, the legal action sent a clear message that I was serious about protecting myself and wouldn't tolerate further abuse. Dr. Bennett helped me process the complex emotions that came with watching my family face consequences for their behavior. Part of me felt guilty seeing Uncle Robert's business collapse and my parents' social standing deteriorate. But she reminded me that these were natural consequences of their choices, not punishments I was inflicting. "Emily," she said, "during one of our sessions, you didn't create this situation, you simply stopped enabling it. There's a big difference between causing harm and allowing natural consequences to occur." As winter melted into spring, I was building a completely new life foundation based on mutual respect rather than one-sided service. The emotional toll of cutting off my family hit me harder than I'd expected. By February and March, what had initially felt like liberation began morphing into something more complex and difficult. Some days I woke up feeling strong and empowered, but other days I found myself questioning everything I'd done. The doubt crept in during quiet moments. Had I overreacted? Was financial abuse really that serious, or was I being dramatic? Like they'd always said, maybe I should have tried harder to work things out privately instead of exposing everything on social media. Dr. Bennett warned me this would happen. Healing isn't linear, Emily, she explained during one of our March sessions. You've spent 32 years in a dysfunctional system. Your nervous system is literally rewiring itself to function in healthy relationships. That process involves setbacks, confusion, and grief. The grief was the hardest part. I was mourning the family I'd never actually had, while simultaneously celebrating my freedom from the family I'd endured. Some nights I cried for the little girl who'd tried so hard to earn love through service. Other nights I felt angry all over again at how they'd exploited my generosity. Marcus watched me navigate these emotional waves with patience and concern. During my worst moments, when I'd spiral into self-doubt and guilt, he'd gently remind me of specific examples of their mistreatment. Remember Thanksgiving, Emily. Remember how they talked about you in the kitchen. Remember the secret group chat. Remember Uncle Robert stealing your credit. His consistency became my anchor when my own memory tried to minimize their abuse. Work continued to be my safe haven. At Mile High Marketing, my value was recognized and my contributions were appreciated. When Brad Morrison tried to undermine a client presentation in February, our HR director Jennifer Walsh called him into a formal meeting about his behavior pattern. Emily has been an exemplary employee and leader, she told him, according to Jessica, who'd overheard the conversation. Your attempts to sabotage her authority reflect poorly on your professionalism and could constitute workplace harassment. Brad's attitude changed dramatically after that meeting. He began treating me with grudging respect, and by March he'd started looking for opportunities at other agencies. The validation at work helped me recognize what healthy professional relationships looked like, which made the contrast with my family dynamics even starker. In early March, I received an unexpected phone call that changed everything. The caller ID showed a Colorado number I didn't recognize. Is this Emily Richardson? The voice was young, female, and nervous. Yes, who's calling? This is Rachel Martinez. I'm Uncle Robert's daughter. I saw your Facebook post and I really need to talk to you, Rachel. I'd forgotten about Uncle Robert's daughter from his second marriage. She was in college at Colorado State, studying business, and we'd barely interacted over the years. We met for coffee at a small cafe near the CSU campus in Fort Collins. Rachel looked exhausted and stressed, clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. Emily, I need to tell you something about the family that you probably don't know. What Uncle Robert did to you, using your credit without permission, he's been doing that kind of stuff for years. To lots of people. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages between family members that revealed a much darker picture than I'd imagined. My parents had been complaining about my Facebook post, calling me ungrateful and mentally unstable. Ashley had suggested I needed psychiatric help. Michael had joked about how I'd always been the dramatic one in the family. But worse than their criticism was what Rachel revealed about the financial manipulation. Emily, your parents have been using your credit card information for way more than you know about, not just the kitchen renovation. My mom works part-time at their bank, and she's seen them make cash advances using your cards multiple times. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The $28,000 I'd calculated was apparently just the tip of the iceberg. Rachel also confirmed what I'd suspected about the secret group chat. They've been talking about you behind your back for years, planning how to get money from you, complaining when you ask questions, making fun of your career achievements. My mom always felt bad about it, but she was afraid to speak up. She showed me screenshots that Uncle Robert's ex-wife had saved. Messages where my parents called my promotion overhyped, where Ashley suggested I was getting too big for my britches, where Michael joked about how easy it was to manipulate me into funding their activities. Reading those messages felt like being stabbed repeatedly. These people had spent years mocking me while taking my money, criticizing my character while exploiting my generosity. But Rachel's revelation also brought an unexpected gift. She'd decided to cut contact with Uncle Robert after learning about his credit fraud, and she was looking for healthier family connections. "I don't want to be part of this toxic system anymore," she told me. "You're the only family member who's ever treated me with genuine kindness. Would it be okay if we stayed in touch for the first time since the New Year's Eve disaster?" I felt like I was gaining family instead of losing it. Rachel's information also proved crucial for the legal case. Sarah Kim was able to use her evidence to strengthen our lawsuit against Uncle Robert and to pursue additional charges against my parents for the unauthorized credit card usage. The discovery that my financial abuse was far more extensive than I'd realized initially sent me into a dark spiral. I spent 3 days barely able to get out of bed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their betrayal. But with Dr. Bennett's help, Marcus's support, and Rachel's validation, I began to see it differently. Every piece of evidence that emerged proved I'd been right to trust my instincts and protect myself. My healing process wasn't linear, but it was real, and it was progress. The legal victory came faster than anyone expected. By late April, Sarah Kim called with news that would change everything. Uncle Robert had agreed to a settlement rather than face criminal prosecution that could have sent him to federal prison. "Emily," she said, her voice filled with satisfaction. "He's agreed to pay $12,000 in damages plus cover all your legal fees. His business is declaring bankruptcy, but we've secured priority status for your claim." $12,000 wasn't the full amount Uncle Robert had stolen, but it represented something more important than money. It was validation, acknowledgement, and a clear statement that his behavior had consequences. The settlement also included a formal admission of credit fraud and a legally binding agreement that Uncle Robert would have no contact with me for 5 years. If he violated the order, he'd face immediate criminal prosecution. But my parents weren't finished trying to manipulate the situation. In May, they attempted what Dr. Bennett called a classic abuser tactic, the fake reconciliation. My mother left a voicemail that was clearly scripted and rehearsed. "Emily, honey, your father and I have been doing some soul searching, and we think it would be good for the whole family to go to counseling together. We've found a wonderful Christian therapist who specializes in family healing. We all need to work on communication and forgiveness." The suggestion was laughable on multiple levels. They wanted to control the narrative by choosing their own therapist, preferably someone who would focus on forgiveness rather than accountability. They wanted to frame our conflict as a communication problem rather than acknowledging their systematic abuse. Dr. Bennett helped me craft a response that was clear and final. I called my mother back and left my own voicemail. "Mom, I appreciate the counseling suggestion, but I'm not interested in family therapy. I've been working with my own therapist, and she's helped me understand that what happened wasn't a communication problem. It was financial abuse, credit fraud, and systematic emotional manipulation. I'm not ready for contact with the family, and I may never be ready. Please respect my boundaries." My mother's response came within hours, and it revealed her true feelings about my boundaries. She left a furious voicemail calling me selfish, ungrateful, and mentally unstable. She accused me of destroying the family for attention and suggested I needed psychiatric medication. The mask had slipped completely. Any pretense of love or concern evaporated when I refused to comply with their manipulation attempt. Meanwhile, Ashley was dealing with her own consequences. Her marketing firm had been acquired by a larger agency, and during the integration process, her new supervisors had discovered my viral Facebook post during their background research. While they couldn't fire her for family issues, her career advancement had stalled completely. She'd been passed over for 2 promotions, and colleagues had begun treating her differently once they learned about the family financial abuse. Ashley's professional reputation, which she'd worked years to build, was now permanently linked to ethical questions about her character. Professional success continued to accelerate for me, without the constant drain of family dysfunction. Patricia Hendricks offered me a partnership track position at Mile High Marketing Solutions with equity ownership and profit sharing starting in 2026. Emily, she told me during our meeting, you've shown incredible leadership and resilience this year. Your work has been exceptional, and your community involvement with the Denver Rescue Mission has brought positive attention to our agency. We'd like you to consider becoming a junior partner. The offer represented everything I'd worked toward professionally, and it came at exactly the moment when I was finally free to pursue my goals without family sabotage. Rachel had become the family member I'd always wanted. She visited Denver regularly, and we'd developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. She was thriving in college, majoring in business ethics, and planning to write her senior thesis on financial abuse in family systems. I wish I'd spoken up sooner about what I saw happening to you, she told me during one of our dinner conversations. But I was afraid of causing drama or getting kicked out of the family myself. You were protecting yourself, Rachel. That's not something you should feel guilty about. I'm just grateful we found each other now. The Denver Rescue Mission partnership had evolved into something beautiful and meaningful. Maria Santos and I had been planning the inaugural Chosen Family New Year's celebration for months, with corporate sponsorship from Mile High Marketing and several other local businesses. Marcus had become my true partner in every sense of the word. In June, he surprised me with a weekend trip to Aspen and a proposal that was everything my family relationships had never been: respectful, loving, and based on genuine appreciation for who I was, rather than what I could provide. Emily, he said as we sat on the deck of our mountain resort overlooking the Rockies, you've shown me what real strength looks like. You've rebuilt your entire life based on your values, rather than other people's expectations. I want to build a future with someone that's brave and authentic. The ring was perfect, the moment was perfect, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely valued and seen by someone who mattered to me. Sarah Kim had also helped me establish comprehensive legal protections. We'd filed restraining orders against my parents for the unauthorized credit card usage, and they'd agreed to pay restitution of $8,000 rather than face criminal charges. The legal victories weren't about revenge. They were about establishing clear consequences and protecting my future financial security. By summer 2025, I'd built a completely new life foundation based on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and genuine appreciation, rather than exploitation disguised as family obligation. December 2025 arrived with a sense of anticipation rather than dread for the first time in nearly a decade. Instead of frantically planning a party for people who criticized my every effort, I was preparing to host the inaugural Denver Chosen Family New Year's celebration at the Colorado Convention Center. 200 people had registered for the event. Families experiencing homelessness abuse, survivors who'd cut contact with toxic relatives, elderly people whose adult children had abandoned them, and individuals who'd simply chosen to build healthier support networks. The Denver Rescue Mission had partnered with Mile High Marketing Solutions to create something unprecedented: a formal celebration for people who understood that family isn't always about blood. I stood at the podium looking out at faces filled with hope and gratitude, feeling more nervous than I had presenting to Fortune 500 clients. These people had come to hear my story because it reflected their own experiences with boundary-setting financial abuse and the courage to choose self-respect over family obligation. 1 year ago tonight, my parents sent me a text message 3 days before New Year's Eve, telling me not to come to the party I'd been organizing and funding for 8 years. My siblings and uncle all agreed with thumbs-up reactions. That message changed my life forever, but not in the way they intended. I shared the journey from people-pleasing caretaker to empowered advocate, from financial victim to legal victor, from isolated scapegoat to community builder. The audience responded with knowing nods, supportive murmurs, and applause that felt like validation rather than polite obligation. The climax of the evening came when Marcus took the microphone during our resolution ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I've watched Emily rebuild her entire life based on courage and authenticity. She's shown me what real strength looks like, and I want to spend the rest of my life supporting someone that remarkable. He dropped to one knee in front of 200 people who'd become our chosen family, and the room erupted in cheers when I said yes. The proposal felt perfect because it happened surrounded by people who celebrated love instead of exploiting it. As midnight approached, Maria Santos from the Denver Rescue Mission shared updates about how our partnership had grown. Local businesses were sponsoring the event annually, other cities were replicating our model, and we'd received inquiries from abuse survivor organizations across Colorado about expanding the program. Emily's story has inspired something bigger than any of us imagined, Maria announced. This isn't just about one woman breaking free from family dysfunction. This is about creating new traditions that honor healthy relationships and mutual respect. The countdown to midnight felt magical in a way that family obligations never had. Instead of performing gratitude for ungrateful people, I was surrounded by individuals who genuinely appreciated kindness and community. Meanwhile, my former family was experiencing very different New Year's circumstances. Uncle Robert's construction business had declared bankruptcy after the fraud investigation, and he was working as a regular crew member for his former competitor. My parents were struggling financially without my subsidies and had downgraded to a small apartment after selling their house. Ashley's career had stagnated permanently after the family scandal became public knowledge. Michael was working 2 jobs after his girlfriend left, and his lifestyle expenses exceeded his income. Ryan had moved back in with my parents after his mortgage was declined due to poor credit management. These weren't consequences I'd created through revenge, they were natural results of behavior patterns that had finally caught up with them. Without my enabling, they'd been forced to face the reality of their choices. Rachel had flourished in our newly formed relationship. She'd completed her business degree with honors, written her thesis on financial abuse in family systems, and been accepted to graduate school with a full scholarship. She'd also formally changed her last name to Martinez, completely severing ties with the Richardson side of the family. "You saved my life by showing me it was possible to leave," she told me, as we danced at the celebration. "I would have stayed trapped in that dysfunction forever if you hadn't been brave enough to speak up." My professional life had reached heights I'd never imagined possible. The partnership at Mile High Marketing Solutions included equity ownership, profit sharing, and recognition as a community leader. Without family drama draining my energy, my creativity and leadership abilities had flourished. As the evening wound down, I reflected on the journey from December 29th, 2024 to December 31st, 2025. 12 months ago, I'd been a people-pleasing caretaker desperate for approval from people incapable of giving genuine love. Tonight, I was an empowered advocate, surrounded by chosen family who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. The most profound realization was that self-love isn't selfish, setting boundaries isn't cruel. Choosing relationships that honor your worth isn't unreasonable. These lessons had cost me blood relatives, but they'd gained me authentic family and genuine happiness. If you're watching this story and recognizing patterns from your own life, I want you to know that you deserve relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. And you have the power to choose family members who celebrate your successes instead of exploiting your generosity. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took your kindness for granted? What gave you the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. And if my journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about finding strength, setting boundaries, and creating the life you truly deserve. Remember, the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to walk away from people who don't value you.